The Dwarves have been in the game since the very beginning, all the way back in Warhammer 1, and I've always felt that they got the short end of the stick when it came to reworks, apart from the vampires, no pun intended. But with the Thrones of Decay update, they're finally getting some love with massive changes to their existing mechanics as well as a few new ones. So let's take a look at how exactly everything works in this new 3.0 version of the Dwarves. So instead of the old basic Grudges bar, we now have the brand new Ages of Reckoning and a time limit. Every 10 turns there will be an Age of Reckoning and your faction will receive one of 5 sets of effects as shown from the 5 different sections at the top of the screen. You rise through the tiers by progressing and clearing grudges. These can be legendary grudges, which I'll come to in a second, or just by battling enemies. Every enemy army or settlement has an amount of grudge points associated with it, and killing the army or taking the settlement will add those points to your total. Bear in mind that your score on the bar is a percentage of the max grudges, so try not to overfill this to avoid not having the points when you really need them. Once the Age of Reckoning time runs out, you'll gain whatever the tier specifies. This will be some sort of statistical buffs or debuffs, as well as access to some Grudge Settler units. You can then also choose to immediately start building up to a new age, or delay this for 10 turns, but when it does arrive, you'll need to settle more grudges to succeed. The Great Book itself has also been reorganized with 3 new tabs. We have Legendary Grudges, and these are shared grudges that are important to all the clans in the game. You can work together to complete these, and upon completion, they provide some very powerful, unique bonuses like underway passages between specific locations very quickly. They also provide a big hit of settled grudges towards your next Age of Reckoning, so if you can time completing them when you need points, you can really maximize your bonuses. On the whole, these offer you a lot of side quests and things to do outside of the standard sandbox gameplay, and if you want to complete them all, it'll lead you all over the map. If you ask me, objectives and things to do outside of endless conquest is one of the main problems of the game, so these little side quests are definitely a great addition. Our next tab is Legendary Lords. This shows you the other legendary dwarf lords in the game and gives you the option to confederate them. To do this, you need to have settled more grudges than them, with each faction requiring a specific amount, which it'll tell you when you highlight over the confederation button. And don't worry if the faction has been wiped out, as it says, they'll just be added to your roster even if you don't get the faction. Now our last tab is Grudge Settlers. These are unique units that are added as each Age of Reckoning is completed. They are based on standard units but with some very minor differences, like small stat increases or different contact effects and abilities. Each unit will tell you what's different by selecting them in this menu, so you know what you're getting. It can be recruited from the Grudge Settlers button below your army and cost nothing, but do have upkeep, so make sure you don't recruit yourself into the red. That said, getting a higher Age of Reckoning score reduces this upkeep, so as long as you keep settling grudges, you should have no problems. As you might have just caught, the Dwarves also have a new teleportation mechanic. Upon completing one of the related legendary grudges, the underways will be cleared and allow you to teleport around the map to the different mountain holds. Instead of this being locked to specific settlements, it's now entire mountain ranges. For example, the Old World mountains that run from the Northern World's edge to Blightwater. From any of the settlements marked with the underway symbol, you can instantly travel to any other settlement with that symbol in that mountain range or any other that you've unlocked. This does have a 10 turn cooldown to keep things balanced, but it allows you to get around the map a lot easier without taking a bunch of settlements that you don't want. Plus, with a lot of grudges requiring you to take out factions like the Wood Elves or the High Elves, teleporting half the map closer will save you some real time. The Forge has also had a little bit of a rebalance. Don't get me wrong, this is very small tweaks, but it still has been changed. Oath Gold definitely feels a little bit harder to get your hands on to start off with, which makes it a bit more valuable. This aside, it's more or less the same system as before, where you need Oath Gold and tradable resources to craft various items and runes to enhance your characters. There's been some tweaks to items and their costs, but if you played the Dwarves before this system, it isn't all that different. One thing that is different, however, is the research tree. It's now separated into 2 sections, guilds and clans. Guilds is focused on everything non-battle and army related, so economy, infrastructure, diplomacy, etc, etc. Each stage of the tree requires a certain number of techs from the previous stage to be completed before you can move on, and this is just to make sure that you don't get to those endgame techs too quickly. But the techs in each section mean that you likely won't need to get to those later stages until the time that you actually get to them. Over in the clans tab, it is similarly laid out, but is all about units and combat. The higher the stage, the more advanced the units, but you likely won't need buffs to late game units until you unlock late game tiers, so it's paced out just fine. Certain Oath Gold techs lock off smaller trees, so make sure you have some handy for upgrading anything that catches your eye. And one last change to the Dwarves is to some of their units. All the Gyrocopter units have been reworked to now have far more entities. Before they felt very useless since their damage output was so low and they died the instant anything attacked them since they were so easy to outnumber. Now, while they may not be melee powerhouses, you've got a lot more entities to play with, making them a touch easier to keep alive. Plus, the extra entities means those bombs they can drop can cover a much larger area, making bombing runs a great use of their time and extremely deadly if you can find a clump big enough. I won't do stats line by line, but I'll be going through units and showing you the unit cards changing right now, but they're mainly the same with improvements to their ranged ability. For the Gyrocopter, this means ammo, range, armor piercing damage, and the ability to fire on the move, which is a no-brainer. Both Gyrocopter variants are also going from 4 to 12 entities. For the Brimstone, they actually have less ammo, range, and armor piercing, as well as losing their anti-large bonus, but they now have burnt infused attacks, so are more of a support copter than high damage. Lastly, the Bomber, which is now 4 entities and gains a little bit of ammo and range, but has its missile strength cut in half, which is fair enough with the extra entities for all that bombing. And that is everything that has changed in the Dwarf rework. Let me know what you think of these changes in the comments below. Like, subscribe, and if you want more Thrones of Decay content, then check out this guide all about the Empire rework.